Aries' jaw fell open, the chewed laurel leaves forgotten in his mouth. Up there? There was only one place that was up there. Earth! And no ordinary ghost from the underworld had ever been allowed to return there. The gods only knew he'd beg King Hades often enough to let him go back, just once, to search for his fleece. But no, it was absolutely forbidden by the underworld law. He stared at the fair-headed woman, willing her to say more, to explain, but instead she began clapping her hands and singing some rubbish about brave heroes on quests, whilst the others joined hands and skipped around Jason. Questions galloped through his mind. Who was going back to Earth? How would they be chosen? Why did no one ever tell him anything down here? How in the name of Olympus was he going to find out? They were questions. He raged that clearly he wouldn't be answered by a group of women jiggling their bells. And then the answer struck him. Like a hay ball from the skies, it was so big and obvious he wondered why he hadn't hit him before. Of course, there was someone who'd know, he realised, someone who always knew everything, from what the gods were planning to what the pavilion cat had dragged in the night before. Someone who was at this very moment quite alone in the otherwise deserted pavilion. Ignoring the scratch and jab of the branches, Aries bustled backwards out of the laurels, hunched down, tippy-hoofed to the back of the pavilion and... Oh dear, hold on a moment, would you... And try to ignore that splashy noise. Oh no. Right, where was I? Oh yes, now that Aries had relieved himself, he hurried over to the servant's door to the pavilion. He pressed his forehead against the sun-warmed wood and began to push. Of course, a full frontal charge would have been much quicker, but it would have also been much noisier, and Aries couldn't afford to be discovered before he'd had the chance to ask his questions. Taking a breath, Aries struck his hooves into the ground, stiffened his legs and forced his weight against the door. There was a keening sound followed by a sharp crack and splintering as the wood gave way. Aries nosed the shards out of the way and squeezed quickly through the hole into the pavilion kitchen. On either side of him, wooden tables stretched away, piled high with food and hundreds of goblets that twinkled in the sunlight. A gloomy-looking stuffed peacock, set on a high heap of glazed reeds, stared blindly down at him from a shelf as he clattered through into the grand hall. Tall and airy, the hall was dominated by rows of looming white pillars with the statues of each of the 50 Argonauts set between them. Whenever he'd crept in before, he'd blown raspberries at the Tiffys, the helmsman of the Argo, and the Argonauts' getaway driver that night, and waggled his bottom at Calais, supposedly the son of the north wind, but who Aries thought was more like an annoying draught under the door. But he didn't have time today. Instead, he clattered down quickly down the hall, his hooves squealing against the mosaic floor, and skidded around the corner. There she was. The bowsprit from the Argo hung above the door to the dining room, snoozing. A bowsprit, in case you don't know, is a wooden figurehead that decorates the prow of a ship and is often carved to look like the head and shoulders of a woman. And being made of a clump of wood, they don't usually know that much. However, this bowsprit was different. Hewn from an oak tree that grew in the magical woodland of Dordona and enchanted by Athena, goddess of wisdom. This bowsprit had answered all the Argonauts' questions. Wise and thoughtful, she had guided the Argo to Colchis with tips such as turn right at the pole star, take a left after the clashing rocks, and turn around where possible. Psst, hissed Aries. The bowsprit's eyes flickered open. Oh, danger, all shipping, she announced. Major obstacle in the water. Do you mind? Hissed Aries. The bowsprit shrugged, her shoulders creaking like old floorboards. Once her cherrywood face had been polished to a toffee-coloured sheen, her lips painted rose red, her eyes inlaid with ebony. But over the years she'd become infested with woodworm. Far from her life of sea adventures, she now spent most of her time moaning about where the cleaners stuck their feather dusters. What do you want? She muttered, raising a sea-stained eyebrow. I want to know what's happening tonight, said Aries breathlessly, putting on his most engaging smile, which, to be honest, was rather frightening and a bit smelly. The bowsprit regarded him for a moment, blinking her creaking eyelashes. What's in it for me? Linseed oil, pot of beeswax, said Aries. It'll work wonders for your wrinkles. Who are you saying's got wrinkles? They're not wrinkles, sniffed the bowsprit. They're laughter lines. Really? Aries frowned. That must have been some joke. The bowsprit stuck her nose in the air. I'm sorry, soothed Aries. So you should be. Quickly realising his mistake. I really didn't mean that. The bowsprit sniffed. However, said Aries, I have heard that beeswax made from hives of Elysium can work wonders even on wood that's already beautiful. Already beautiful? Aries nodded. Obviously you don't need it, but if you're curious, I could bring you some. Probably turn you back into a sapling, a mere twig of a girl. The bowsprit tilted her head, interested. And you'll throw in a muslin duster? Certainly, said Aries. You've been quite prepared to throw in his grandmother if it meant getting some answers. Done. The bowsprit licked her splintered lips. There's a party tonight. And, prompted Aries, it's going to be amazing, the bowsprit continued. Athena's celebrating the Argonauts' anniversary by holding a competition. What's more, they've made me a crown of laurels, just like they put on the statues in the Olympics. What's it for? Said Aries. To accentuate my good looks, of course. No! Aries shook his head impatiently. I meant the competition. Oh, that. The bowsprit smiled coolly. It's a special assault course to decide who'll be allowed back to Earth on a quest. Aries stared speechlessly. I know, the bowsprit continued. There's never been a competition like it before, and it'll be tough. But Athena wanted something memorable to mark the occasion. Mind you, everyone knows that Jason will win. I mean, he's just totally awesome. Awesome, my hoof, spluttered Aries. You were stuck on the boat that night. You didn't see him in the forest at Colchis, shivering like a swamp rat in the shadows whilst a teenage girl did all his dirty work. So you keep saying, sniffed the bowsprit. As if Jason would hide when there was a giant snake to fight. Her face grew soft and dreamy. Oh, Jason, she sighed, those glorious days we spent at sea together. But Aries had heard enough. Swinging his head round, swing your head round. He turned back towards the great hall and began clomping out. Jason, is it? He muttered, looking back over his massive shoulders at the bowsprit's contented face. Win the quest and return to Earth where my fleece is hidden. He harumphed loudly. We'll see about that. That's the end of chapter 1. We will have chapter 2 tomorrow. Say good night, Aries. Good night.